Do you ever wish people treated you like you treat them? That's a good question. We're going to talk a little bit about that, what's known as the golden rule here in the Sermon on the Mount. So stay tuned.
Welcome to Bible Women in Bathrobes, the podcast where faith meets comfort. Join us Tuesday morning as the gals from Women Warriors of Light and their guests don bathrobes and dive into the inspiring stories of women in the Bible and the teachings of Jesus Christ. From Esther's bravery to the Sermon on the Mount, we explore it all with warmth, laughter, sisterhood, and maybe even a few sleepy-eyed moments. Tune in live or at your leisure as we learn lessons from Scripture which empower women today.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Bible Women in Bathrobes. I'm your host, Tamara K. Anderson. And joining me today is my wonderful Amy Johnson. She's part of our Women Warriors of Light Advisory Board. Thanks for being here today, Amy.
Thank you. It's a good morning.
Yes, it is. Okay, we are in Matthew chapter 7. We've been in Matthew chapter 7 for the last 2 weeks. And today we're kind of coming to a really key verse that really kind of takes what we've been talking about the last 2 weeks. We kind of talked about judging 2 weeks ago and what Jesus means by not judging, and then the mote and the beams in your eye type thing. And then last week we talked about asking and God giving us good gifts. Ask and ye shall receive, seek and ye shall find, all that. And now we come to this key pinnacle verse where it has a really good transition word. And I know Amy loves this transition word, so I'm actually going to invite Amy to read this.
I do love transition words in Scripture. That's so good. Every time I read a transition word like therefore, I'm like, therefore what? Wait, what did I miss? What did I miss? Go back. I love transition words because that tells it just wakes my brain up. And this one, I think we've read this 1,000 times. Therefore, all things whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them, for this is the law and the prophets. And when I read that, therefore again, I kind of perked up and I was like, wait. So he just got through teaching me to not judge unrighteous judgment, to cast the beam out of my own eye, to hold things that are sacred, keep them sacred, and to be willing to ask the Lord for whatever I need or even want. Ask. And now he's saying, therefore, and now he brings it back home. And I think the Lord is really, I love how he does this when he talks to them about the 2 great commandments, and he talks about it, he always brings them back into balance, right? So judge not, we think of that as our neighbor. Then ask God, keep his sacred things sacred. Now we're loving God and we're having a relationship with him. And now he comes back and he brings it back to the neighbor. So he's really good how he keeps bringing them back and forth. And I love that. So he says, therefore, all things, and I love the word all too, by the way, all things. Don't find wiggle room. There's no loophole. All things whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them. I love that. I love that because it just brings back in, okay, I'm working every day to love God by keeping his commandments and being obedient and doing what I do to have a relationship with him. Now I need to take that and mirror it with other people. I've got to make sacrifices to be in a relationship with other people. I have to give. But I also have to have boundaries and expectations too, because there's no relationship without expectations, and sacrifice. And so I love that.
Mm. I love that too. And I remember being a young kid and learning this. In fact, I think there was this even the little song that my mom taught us about, that there's this golden rule and that's do unto others as you would have others do unto you. And as a kid, I remember thinking, okay, that's fairly simple. I can do that, and in a child. And that, I think that's one of the great things about this is that it's simple enough a child can learn it. But the older I get, the more I'm like, this is much more complex than I thought it was when I was 8, 9, whatever, whenever she was teaching me this concept. And so I think that's the beauty of the gospel of Jesus Christ is there's so many concepts that are so simple that even a kid can get them. And yet they're so complex the more you dive into them.
Yeah.
And the older you get, the more baggage we carry,
Right.
that golden rule of doing to others. Because often by the time you get older, you've had things done unto you that were not very nice.
Right.
And so we're looking through the life sometimes through a little bit of jaded lenses.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we kind of got to go back to the beginning of this chapter and say, judge not, or judge with righteous judgment. There's that need of repentance and forgiveness that comes into play for us to be our best selves and to live this golden rule, right? It's so much. It was easier to live as a child than it is as an adult, I think.
I think so, because trauma plays its part, right? And so you bumped and crashed into people, and many times we bump and crash into each other because we can't see because of the beam in our eye. Right?
Yes.
So, and honestly, I love this because seriously, God really is. Jesus constantly is going back and forth between this love God, love your neighbor, love God, love your neighbor. Just in the first 14 verses of this chapter, he just keeps cycling back and forth and back and forth. And I really believe that that is his way of saying these two things have to be in balance.
Mm.
They have to, or none of this works.
Mm-hmm.
I can do my very best, live all the commandments, keep all the commandments, and essentially be perfect in all the spelled out commandments, and still be super judgmental of somebody that I think isn't doing the same thing.
Mm.
And that's not really God's plan.
Mm-hmm.
Or I can swing the other side and I can be totally accepting of all the behaviors and all the garbage in the world to the point that I become not a covenant keeper and not the kind of person that God would have me be, because he does have some absolute laws.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to find that balance. And I love how there's another connector word in this verse.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I love it. Right after the colon, he says, for, and that's another connector word. For this is the law and the prophets. And what he's really saying is, love God, love your neighbor, and that's where all the law and the prophets hang in between.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I really think this golden rule, I actually have a really good friend, counselor. He taught me, he teaches me every time I'm with him. But he did say the other day, a couple months ago, I was up there and he said, think to yourself, the way I'm behaving right now, would I want to be married to me? And and to me, that's essentially what the golden rule is.
Mm-hmm.
Think of how I'm behaving right now in this relationship. Would I want to be in this relationship with me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what I try and keep. And that goes for God too. If I'm tromping on things that are sacred to him, is that going to be what he wants to be in a relationship? Would he want to be in a relationship with me then if I'm trashing the things that really matter to him? Mm-hmm. So it's intertwined and interdependent.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, I love how you brought in those transition words, both the therefore and the for. And I also love how you pointed out that all things whatsoever you would that men should do to you, do you even so to them. And this is easy to do when we're feeling good and happy and healthy. It's harder to do when we're off balance, right? When we're feeling sick, when we're
Hormonal.
grieving. What hormonal ladies, hello. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
These are times that it's really, really hard.
Yeah.
And those are things we can ask God to be with us in because we're doing the best we can in the shape that we're in. And maybe those are things that we ask for. Help us to find things that help us go through this PMS time with less PMS.
Yeah. And I had to learn phrases too, like, I really love you, and I don't think you're doing anything wrong, but I'm gonna need to go take a 15-minute timeout or half hour till I get my brain back on.
Mhm.
Like I can't. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to shun you, but I've got to have space, and I got to take this to God, because you and I can get in this vortex. And I had to learn phrases like that in
Mhm.
order to stop me from mistreating someone.
Yeah, no, and I've had to have frank conversations like that with my husband, and he'll come home from work and be like, "How's your day?" And I'm like, "I feel so angry, and I don't even know why."
Yeah.
And I said, "I think it's time for me to start my period, and so I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm feeling angry, and it's just that fluctuation of hormones in me, and so you know, I'm gonna give you guys dinner and I'm going to go, like you said, I need a break because
Yeah.
what I'm feeling inside doesn't even make sense in my brain. Like I
Yeah.
know enough to understand that I'm
Right.
not functioning well right now. Something is wrong with my body.
It's not working. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not working the way it's supposed to. Oh. Anyway, so and so I think there is that where this golden rule is fantastic and when we're feeling great it's easy to do, but like I said, there are times and moments when we don't feel optimally,
Right.
and that is why we need Jesus. And I've taken time to myself and had prayers where I've said, God, I don't want to feel this way. I don't know why I'm feeling this way. I need your help to get me out of this funk, um, to cast out this feeling of anger and uh rage, because sometimes those emotions are so strong in us, and they're chemical reactions happening within our body. And so I need God's help to move me through that. I know I'm going to be a little more punchy at that point, and so help me to cast this out and pray and bring in the spirit of peace and love and joy, and that's usually where I live, you know and so uh inviting God in to help us live this golden rule, uh, even in those hard times.
Well, don't you think that kind of plays into the next couple of verses? Because it's really, when I think of straight, I kind of think of a difficult pass. And when it's real easy to just explode, it's a little harder for me to bring it all in and just go to God.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
actually quite a bit harder for me, right?
Yeah. Well, let's read those verses since you brought them up. So we've talked about this golden rule, doing to men as we want them to do to us. And it says, verse 13 and 14, enter ye in at the strait gate, strait, and we'll talk about that word in a minute. For wide is the gate and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. Because strait, again, strait, is the gate, and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. So I know you're wordy, Amy,
I
and
am a wordy. I
you're a wordy. You like
am.
words.
That's a new thing. I'm a foodie and a wordy. How did that happen to me?
It's awesome. So tell us what the word straight means.
Well,
strait. Yeah.
straight means narrow, but it can also mean an actual narrow waterway, right? And then another definition is also a limited spatial capacity. When I look at this, and that's what I was trying to say, there's so many words in here, but when you enter into this narrow space that's kind of difficult to get in, it's okay, this will make sense, because then when you read it out loud, this actually happened to me. Enter ye in at the straight gate, for wide is the gate, I love connector, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction. And I heard in my head contention. And it's really easy for me to go and be big and explosive and large. But if I do that, I'm not going to fit in this narrow gate as well. And that peace, that wholeness that comes from looking vertically instead of horizontally. And again, see, that vertical allows me to get into the straight. Do you see? I love this. I love this. And so if I look vertically, and I don't have to be big and overbearing and explosive, then I can fit in that straight way. And that's why few there be that find it. Because it is much more difficult to look up and not make you the star of the show and take the path that leads away from contention and destruction than it is to just give in to the natural man and explode.
We're going to take a quick break, but when we get back, we'll have more lessons, tips, and things you can apply to your life. Stay tuned. How many of you out there feel like your life is chaotic, crazy, and completely awful compared to the norm? What if I were to tell you you are normal for you? I'm so excited to tell you about my book, Normal for Me, Learning to Love and Accept Life's Detours with God's Help. This book took me 10 years to write, and I share 20 years worth of lessons learned in my life detours, including being in a car accident and having 2 of my children diagnosed on the autism spectrum. In this book, I share the secrets of how I made it from despair to peace with God's help. I talk about being a zombie mom, living in survival mode, learning true faith, and how I debunked the myth that God doesn't give you more than you can handle. Normal for Me also includes a bonus diagnosis survival guide at the very end of the book, in which I share 12 tips to survive and thrive in tough times. So, what are you waiting for? Grab your copy of Normal for Me today on Amazon or on my website, tamarakanderson.com.
Yeah. I love how you describe that. As we were talking about that, it reminds me in southern Utah, they have a lot of narrows you can hike through where there's huge sheer red rock cliffs on both sides of you, and it kind of channels water down to a super narrow spot. If you ever hike in Zion in the Narrows, that's kind of, it gets to some really narrow spots where, it's just a couple of feet on each side of you. It can feel a little claustrophobic. Yeah. But it's fascinating to me that the water can carve out, and these it starts as just a simple crack, and then you go through this spot. But that's kind of what I figured. Straight doesn't mean straight like an arrow, like without bends, but straight means this narrow spot, and it takes discipline to like you said, rein in all these parts of us that need to be brushed off and refined and stuff like that, and follow God's commandments, especially in the world today, where anything and everything goes. God is saying, here, if you want this better, peaceful, more complete, full life, then this is the path you need to walk. And it's hard. or many people would do it, right? It's hard. It's easier to just anything goes, but it's if you want this peace, if you want to walk with me, then this is what you need to do. If you want life eternal, because that's where he's leading us, to which leadeth unto life, which is, life eternal with God. Few there be that find it. And I think there is some people who still in this world have not heard of Jesus, so there is some of that, but I think the few there be that find it also indicates it's a difficult walk. It's a harder walk, because it's refining our very, very souls. It is shaving off all those things that are inhibiting us from walking this straight or more narrow path. We've got to unburden some of these things we're carrying with us so that we can fit through, or we're never going to fit through.
Right.
We've got to shed all these habits we've picked up, perhaps that are bad habits. It's hard. It's a very refining and difficult process.
It is, and I love that you brought up the Narrows that are down in the St. George area of Utah, because I've walked the Narrows, like I've gone into the Narrows, right? And you're right, at some point you kind of almost can get a panic, like, am I going to fit? And honestly, if you had a backpack full of stuff, you would not fit. But I love how the only way for me that I can feel not that claustrophobic is to look up, because that's when you see the light. Right. And I love that, because you're going along and you're like, okay, am I going to fit? This is really tight. And then you look up and you're like, okay, but it's good because I can breathe. Like there's light. I'm good. And I really truly believe that that's how life gets. Things, we get encumbered, like you said, with so many things. And then we can't take all that garbage and be successful in relationships, but we can take all that garbage, go to the Lord, dump it, and then come back and fit in this narrow path. And I love that.
Yeah. And I think that is the hope that he's trying to convey here, is that no, not everything goes, but you come as you are, bring your backpack full of stuff, give it to me, lay it at the cross, and I will take that. And now you can fit, but we do have to give away all our sins to know him and let him begin to refine us. And it's not always the most comfortable feeling to find out, oh, got to give up my favorite sins here.
Yeah. Yesterday, we were talking about being harrowed up in sin, or in the pain of sin. And somebody, a farming guy, was like, I don't know what they mean by using harrowed as a verb, but I know what harrow is, and that is this tool they use in farming to turn over the dirt and expose the underneath dirt to oxygen. And then this has just been rolling around in my head all day. Like, am I willing to go to the Lord with all my pain, all my stuff, pain, by the way, that I've caused myself and others, pain that they've caused me and themselves, right? Because my thing that I always say is, doesn't matter who pulled the pin on the grenade, both parties got injured, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so am I willing to go to the Lord and say, okay, you can do whatever's necessary to expose me to life and light and all the things that are necessary so that I can now fit in this straight gate.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lord talks about baptism as a straight and narrow gate, right, too. And so he's saying, unencumber yourselves with my help in order to be able to come into covenantal relationship with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like that. And I like that image of harrowing and farming,
I know, me too. I loved
Great.
that.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Because that's
really
what
loved it.
God does to us. He helps us uncover. Well, and it's not just as we enter that baptismal covenant relationship. I think this is a process,
Absolutely.
every day, every week, every month, that, oh God, I messed up again. And here I am at the cross once more, laying my burdens at your feet and asking you to take it and help me fix this. Help me um, become new in you again, because I make mistakes all the time. It is a constant process of inviting him in, not giving up on ourselves, not just saying, oh, the heck, I've done too much wrong. Although sometimes we may feel that way. And that's how Satan wants us to feel, like, oh, I have done too many things wrong. God doesn't want me. God always wants you, you know. Uh, and yeah.
Well, and that kind of goes back to what we were talking about a couple of weeks ago about don't be so hard on ourselves
Mm.
because, and again, the adversary, we see this constantly where it is part of natural man and adversarial stuff to constantly beat ourselves down and pick ourselves apart and think that we are not good enough and we're not smart enough and we're not pretty enough and we're not whatever. We have so many things that we're not enough of, right?
Mhm.
But the Lord really does want us to unencumber ourselves by coming to Him over and over and over and over and over and over.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Well, these verses have been so powerful. Let's wrap up here. Takeaways from today. We've talked both about the golden rule and then this straight gate leading to life. Any thoughts, final thoughts there, Amy?
I really do think for me, this has been just a reminder of how much God's plan is about relationship. And if I want to have positive, healthy, happy relationships that bring joy, then I need to look up all the time. I need to look up to God. I had this couple experiences yesterday where I just felt so much love. The first experience, so much love for my husband. He was sitting next to me on the couch. He was working on something, and I was pondering scripture and different things, and I just felt this overwhelming love for him and that relationship, and thought about how much joy has come into my life because of being in a good relationship with him and working on it together. And then I also had this thought about God and how he didn't give me prayer necessarily for him. He didn't give me scriptures for him. He gave me those things for me. And so all of this is about what has he given me to have a healthy relationship with him, and what am I giving him so that I can have a relationship that's healthy with others.
I love how you brought those great commandments into this discussion today, because it really does hinge on that. I think the more we've dived into this Sermon on the Mount, the more I realize it really is, everything boils down to those two things, right?
Yeah.
Relationship with him and our relationship with others. And we need him if we are going to live the golden rule. We need God in our lives so that we can act and treat others as we want to be treated.
Right.
Because he is the one that can work in us so that we are treating all people with kindness and love and grace and compassion and no judgment, as we talked about at the beginning, with just that God can kind of use us as a vessel to shine his light. but we have to have that relationship with him first, because as we talked about the other week, we can only love others as much as we love God and ourselves. If we don't have that love for ourselves, it's hard for us to shine it to others.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that's really what it boils down to, is as we strengthen and put our relationship with God as a top priority, and developing that relationship with him and understanding how much he does love and care about you as an individual and me as an individual, then we can fulfill all these commandments. It really does start there, though.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today on today's version of Bible Women in Bathrobes. We hope that you found something in here that's helpful to you, whether you're struggling with people treating you the way you should be treated, or in wanting to improve your relationship with those around you. Start with God, and he'll help you work and figure it out with everyone else. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Bible Women in Bathrobes, hosted by Women Warriors of Light. We've loved exploring the stories of remarkable women or the teachings of the Savior today with you. If today's episode brought someone special to mind, be sure to spread the word. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss a moment of inspiration and sisterhood. Just a friendly reminder, all opinions we share are entirely personal, as we are trying to decipher and apply Bible teachings just like you are. Until next time, stay faithful, and may your journey be blessed and illuminated by God's love.